Movie number 246, It Happened One Night. This is one of the most influential romantic comedies of all time. Can't believe this movie came out in 1934. It still holds up today, and I would even say that it could be a timeless film, at least for the next 50 years maybe. You can go back and watch this movie and still be entertained throughout the entire runtime of this film. And yeah, we'll get started with the editing in this movie. I think the editing in this movie is perfect. I'm very impressed for the time that it came out. There's really just no part of the movie, at least for me, that I found dragged or lulled or was unnecessary. And I think it was very tightly woven together, and the story flowed just perfectly from start to finish. The editing is something that I'm sure influenced a lot of films after this. And I think that, a lot of filmmakers should take notes from this editing and how to make a good rom-com. I do think it deserves all of that praise that it got for being one of the most influential rom-coms of all time. And yeah, like the story is, you can tell why it's so influential, because of course, so many rom-coms are these random chance type movies where the couple or soon-to-be couple ends up meeting each other randomly and sort of falls in love in first sight type of story. And this one is exactly the same as that. I think for when it came out, it was probably fairly original, but now we've seen that 1,000 times. And this one though surprised me because the story really went in directions that I did not expect, and I thought they were pretty clever. There's a lot of rom-coms that have come out that are super basic. I think the story is just super simple, and they're very forgettable movies, but this one you won't forget. Basically how they're joined together, the couple, is very interesting and different means than you would think, at least that I was expecting, right? Like the guy is basically following this girl, and he has to do it for work, right? He has to follow her to write a good story for the paper, and he, because she's such a high level identity or person, he has to follow her, and he thinks he's going to write what's going to be the best story he's ever written for the newspaper, and he's really tied to her and conveys throughout the movie that that's all that he wants out of her, right? Like, he doesn't tell her straight up, but that's really what he gives off. And the two end up, spoiler alert, they end up falling in love, first her and then him. And I felt like just how they were attached was a very unique story. And the fact that they met on a bus of all places is just another one of those tropes you see in rom-coms nowadays, but I'm sure back then, it wasn't as common. And, we have so many movies so many rom-coms that are like that. These people just randomly meet on a plane or a train or a bus, some sort of means of transportation. And a lot of the times, like, the girl will be either like in some sort of marriage or, have a boyfriend or she has some sort of a, situation going on with her. And in this one, we have that too. And yeah, you can see in the story, especially how it was very influential to all of these rom-coms that are coming after this. But I think what's even more influential is the editing. Like I said, the editing in this movie is just, it's very impressive. And I think for like a movie like Citizen Kane that came out after this, you can see a lot of influence on Citizen Kane from this movie as far as the editing goes. And just the way that they put it together, not really taking any breaks, and everything was selected perfectly from, the whole runtime. You're invested in this story. So, hats off to them for the editing, and editing that back then, I'm sure, was extremely challenging. And yeah, so the acting, I would say, especially from Clark Gable, is very good. He's really the only character in this film that He has some sort of variety in his acting. There's actually a lot of moments where he's just quiet, especially towards the beginning of the movie, and you just see his facial expressions towards Ellie Andrews, right? And yeah, it's pretty, he does a really good job at conveying how he feels about her through his facial expressions. And then when we get into his actual acting, I was invested, and I think a lot of viewers will be invested in his character and his acting. He does a really good job at selling that character, and I think for her character is a little more one-dimensional, but she does a really good job with portraying that character, sort of the elite class woman who doesn't know how to live in middle class or lower class society. And you know, she does a good job, and I think the chemistry between them especially was excellent, and that is really what matters in a rom-com, is the chemistry between the two. Is it excellent? Is it believable? And that's the number one thing that matters. You know, the story of course matters, but for a rom-com, it's the chemistry between the two actors. And if the chemistry is right, you're gonna wanna watch the whole movie, even if the story's a little cheesy, right? But if the chemistry isn't there, I think for a lot of rom-coms, you probably just turn it off or not be invested into it. So I would say this movie for me, It Happened One Night, is an 8.2 out of 10, a very high rating for a rom-com. And I think that this deserves to be in the top 50 movies of all time, not number 246, move that all the way up to the top 50. I think just because of how influential this movie was, you can just see the exact format and style for all the rom-coms that come after it. They just copied this one essentially. And yeah, and I think the acting was good. The story was told very well. It was unique in ways I didn't expect. And that's always what you want to see from a movie. You want to be surprised, and you want to see something that's different. And this movie had those elements in it. And yeah, so I would say this movie was an 8.2 out of 10 for me. Pretty high rating, might be one of the highest ratings I've ever given to a romantic comedy. And I think it deserves all the praise that it received. And yeah, I think that Frank Capra did a great job directing this movie, and the actors, like I said before, did a very good job in investing me into what they were doing and the story as a whole. So I would highly recommend this movie. It still holds up today, almost a timeless movie for me. I think the only thing that might not hold up is, you know, some of the jokes and things that they say are, I was just like, you know, I've never heard that before. Like, I don't know why that's funny or how that was an insult, but I guess back then it was. So those don't really hold up, but there isn't too much of that. Really, it's the focus is on the story as a whole. And yeah, it definitely holds up today. So let me know what you guys think of this one. If you agree with me or if you don't agree with me, where would you put it on the top 250 list? Or if you wouldn't even include it on the list, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to read my full written review on Letterboxd, that will be in the description below. And guys, remember, it's just art, dudes, and I will see you all tomorrow.